Gonna dip in your hip, I glide in your stride. Welcome to the mothership, the home of the travelers of the universe, with shows throughout the week. Everything you want, everything you could need. From the paranormal to the supernatural, from the spiritual to the unknown, from emotions to comedy. You can find us at Facebook, Twitch, YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, and so much more. This is R.I.F.T Nation Network, the RNN. And now, your featured show. Shall we begin?
Hey guys, welcome back to this month's episode of Monthly Mystic Mayhem. Lisa, where'd you go? You're already starting on me.
Oh Lord, I know. Well, you did that to me last week or last month, actually. Sorry. Last month, like, yeah, it's scary, isn't it? No,
she's like a revenge.
Right, exactly. Yes, welcome to Mystic Mayhem. We always got to start with a little mayhem, and there we go. I don't know what happened. There was something on my screen, and when I clicked on it, I guess I disappeared. I didn't mean to disappear. I apologize, Lisa. I'm so sorry.
It's only appropriate. Today's guest that we're going to be bringing on, of course, we got to talk about football, but it's going to be Bill Konkoleski. I'm probably pronouncing that wrong. Please forgive me. He's with MUFON, the MUFON chapter in Michigan, author in documentaries or docuseries. Directed one of them, I noticed, amazing expert on UFOs. So we're going to get to talking to him here in talking got me so messed up. Him here in a minute. But first I want to know about football, your game.
Football. Well, we know we're all about the Texas A&M.
I didn't even notice.
I know, right? And you know, we're both kind of wearing pink sweatshirts today too. So
yeah, but I got my Texas.
We kind of match. So there we go. So Texas, whether A&M or UT, that's okay. We no, my nephew, the 12th man, Sam Matthews. So let's talk about our most recent game. That one was against LSU, and it was at LSU. It was a very good game. It was, you know, a nail biter through the whole thing. LSU did end up winning that game, which, you know, hey, we can't win them all. But going back to it was the game Saturday the 18th, and we played against Abilene Christian University, and it was our senior game. And my nephew is a senior, so this was a very big game. The fourth quarter was just by far amazing. The very last two plays of the game, the coach, not Jimbo Fisher, because we know he was fired. We're not going to, you know, discuss all that because I don't get into all that. It's none of my business. But our new coach decided to put in our the walk-on team. So, you know, my nephew and then all the players that were walk-ons to A&M, which is a huge privilege. They all went out. Both plays were just unforgettable. They are record-breaking, amazing. To end that game, the senior game with the walk-ons was just amazing. The final, very last play of the game, my nephew, he's a senior, so it will be his very last time playing at Kyle Field, on that field, his very last time. The final play of the game, he made the tackle, and it was our game. It was we won the game. So it was a very emotional game. I get a little teary-eyed right here. Seeing that, you know, this is not the end of him yet. They still have, you know, a couple more games to play, not at home, unfortunately. But I'm telling you right now to watch for him on the NFL, because you're going to see that name, Sam Matthews, my nephew. He's going to be playing for the NFL. I'm telling you right now. Mark my words, y'all. So mark my words. So how about your team? What's going on with your team?
We beat Iowa State. It was to be expected, but I didn't think it was going to be as tight as it was those first 2 quarters. And I started getting drowsy. Have to admit, I fell asleep in the third. Woke up and we had won 26-16. So,
okay. Well, see, maybe you just need to stop watching, and y'all will
we
win.
only have like one more game. I think we play Tech at the end, and that's it.
Oh, okay. Well, that'll be a really good game.
It will, but yeah, it determines a lot, that game. So
yes. Oh wow. Well, fingers crossed for y'all. I mean, I'm not, necessarily a fan of the UT, but I will keep my fingers crossed for you because I love you.
Hey, we're currently different divisions, so it's okay.
You know what? That's true. That's right. That is very true.
For the time being. For the time being, not long. Oh, we need to bring on our guests. Without further ado, let's bring on Bill Kuklowski. I'm going to get him to correct me there. And talk about UFOs now. It's all
I am
UFOs.
so excited about this. I'm very excited about this because, I've told you some weird experiences at the jail that are just very not normal. So,
well, maybe he can fill in some of the blanks for you.
Very cool. Well, all right. Well, let's come on, Bill. Welcome, Bill. How are you doing this evening?
Supersonic. And yourself?
Oh, I'm doing great as always. Just in freezing over here in this 50-degree weather, which is kind of pathetic. I know you got it really cold up in Michigan. It's snowing up there, huh?
It's snowing right now.
Wow. I'd like to say I'm jealous, but I'm not.
Oh, Bill. So
no, it'll be fine. In 6 months, it'll all be over and it'll be sunny again.
That is true. In 6 more months, right? Gotcha. Well, you're more than welcome to come down here at any time and enjoy the sun and the warmer weather. So you just let us know.
And that's what's funny is when I go to visit Michigan, it's during the summer. And even then it's 70s and I'm freezing with my jacket on the beach.
Right.
Total nerd. Yeah. And my family, because they're still up there, they're all swimming, and
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I was watching one of your videos. You've got so many videos and docuseries and stuff. It's hard to get through all of them. But there was one and from 14 about it's called Abducted by Aliens, UFO Encounters of the Fourth Kind. And that one had a lot of stuff in there that was really interesting that I wanted to ask you about. And there was some cases that were mentioned in there. There was Betty and Barney Hill, Travis Walton, and Charles Hicks and Calvin Parker.
Mm-hmm.
Why are those such prominent cases? What happened? Like, was there one more prominent than the next? Are they just well known?
Well, for each of those, they have additional people that were involved, I think, that really boosted each of them. Going chronologically, you have Betty and Barney first, and they really sort of were the first big known recognized abduction case. People had been abducted prior to 1961, but they were credible people in their community. They were regressed by a professional psychotherapist, and their stories had all of the foundational stuff that you find in abduction cases going forward. They were on a vehicle out somewhere in the middle of nowhere. Their vehicle was stopped. They were brought on board. They had medical procedures done to each of them. Some other unusual things happened on board, like Betty was shown a star map. And there were some things that they didn't want to reveal at the time, came out later, and there was some missing time. Just all of the big things that are associated with the phenomena. Their story broke first, and so many stories afterwards were compared to theirs. And one thing that really kept their story going is their niece, Kathleen Martin. She became the head of MUFON's experience or resource team that looked into the abduction phenomena. And she very much kept their story alive and was very important in abduction research for a long time. She's still involved. She's laid back a little bit now, but for many years, she was very much at the forefront as far as MUFON is concerned in terms of abduction research. Travis Walton had, I think it was 7 people there with him, all saw him. get zapped by a light, and all took lie detector tests. Travis was gone for 5 days. So that's kind of a big deal. And after a while, the authorities kind of started to think that Travis's coworkers, he was a logger in Arizona, that they had done something to him. That was 1975. And then the Pascagoula case with that you had mentioned as well with Charles Hickson. I should say, they were involved in a case that's kind of interesting. They were out on some docks fishing late at night, Hickson and Parker, and a ship came down and abducted them. But the beings that took them are unique, or at least unique as far as I know, in terms of the community. It's very possible there are others out there that may have had similar beings to the ones that were taking them, that took them. But these things were tall. They were not like the little gray guys with the big eyes that are commonly reported. These were almost vegetable looking creatures, and they went to the police. The police caught them speaking to each other in a room where they didn't think they were being listened to, and they were holding to their story. The local military base got involved. They took lie detector tests, and their story was authenticated to the best way that anybody could authenticate one of these, as was Walton, as was Betty and Barney Hill. So these are strong pillars, strong foundational cases that were able to springboard into the 80s all of the big abduction stuff that was coming out during that time. Bud Hopkins and Whitley Strieber at the forefront, being joined by others like John Mack and David Jacobs, and many others, just putting in their stories and getting all of their investigation and their personal accounts in the case of some of these individuals. And it really, there was a sort of a golden age of the phenomena, the 80s and the 90s, where these sort of cases were talked about very regularly. And UFOs had been talked about forever, but the abduction phenomena finally found a focus. It was finally put into sort of a context where people could have a conversation about it. Terms were agreed upon. Basic tenets of the phenomena were agreed upon pretty much for the first time. And it was an open discussion for the first time. And many people who'd had these types of experiences, like myself, felt comfortable in coming out and starting to tell our stories, knowing that now there was a community, there was language to use to discuss the phenomena, and it's grown ever since.
That's very interesting. Kind of like the paranormal world in general. It's, it's very interesting. So for people that don't know, necessarily know about like you and your background and what, first brought you into all of this, would you mind sharing, some of that with us?
Yeah. So 1973, I was 2 years old. I'm laying in my crib in my room. It's late at night, and I was not asleep. And I heard, okay, I should step back a second. This little being, little gray guy with big black eyes, walks into my room, stares at me. I had no context for this. It was just this little spindly guy with these giant eyes. And I screamed for my parents, and my mother just called sleepily, "Go to sleep, go to sleep." And after a few moments, the being just sort of walked out of the room. And that's my very first memory in life. And it wasn't anything that came back to me years later, like, oh yeah, I remember that. No, it burned into my memory the moment it happened, and I'd never forgotten it. And I had several other remembered events going forward. Age 4, 3 little gray beings came into my room in the broad daylight. Age 7, I was taken on board, and I received a cut on my arm, a scar to which I still have on my arm. And then as I got into my teen years, many, many experiences, sometimes multiple experiences over the course of some of the weeks in my teen years. And then in my 20s, it continued on. And it tapered off at about age 30. And then it's been infrequent ever since.
Okay.
I have questions about that. There was something where I was watching and it talked about how it's usually not just one experience. People have multiple experiences. Is it?
Mhm.
It's just like those that have had that one experience, you just keep having more, and that you're more prone to having more. Or and then also there was something about sometimes people experience it with other people, like a couple maybe being abducted. How prominent is that versus someone being abducted alone?
Okay, so just to start to get into all of that, and there's a lot there to unpack. I think there are three different ways to, if you look at this phenomena as strangely enough as like a virus or something like that. It's like you can catch it genetically. If your parents have had experiences, it can come to you as well. In my case, it was on my mother's side of the family, and so I got it through the family, so to speak. I have four older brothers. The two older brothers I have, we could go toe to toe in a strange story contest. And then the next two brothers, for some reason, zero between them, not a single one. And then it picked back up with myself. And yeah, so the second way would be is if you are around somebody who regularly has this happen to them. If you're around them enough, especially if it's a partner, romantic partner, then yeah, at some point you very well may just be in the wrong place at the wrong time, so to speak, and then it suddenly starts happening to you as well. And then thirdly, something that could happen is that if you move into a house where this phenomena was very heavily occurring, sometimes even that will be enough, and you'll start to have these experiences as well. And I think the rarest thing, to touch on this part of what you said, I think the rarest thing is that if somebody just has one experience, I think that's the rarest thing of all. I think the beings, and I'll say that they're a mystery, what they are, who they are, where they're from, even some of their deeper motives, is that once they notice somebody, they keep their attention on that individual through their life, pretty much. They, for whatever reason, lock onto somebody. They get invested in them. They follow their life story, sometimes get involved in their life story. I had something happen to me in '95 where they didn't like a girl I was dating and they scared her off. And and so they do get involved sometimes very directly in somebody's life. Yeah, we were up on I'm telling a very edited version of the story. We were up on a hill at a park. It was after dark. We were stargazing, and these three little, and then we were suddenly paralyzed. These three little gray guys came around us, and they were looking her up and down. And at this point, she and I had only been dating for a couple months, and I hadn't told her yet about my experiences. There's this point where you have to, because they could be, again, in the wrong place, wrong time. But I thought I was still a little bit safe to let that out. Mm-mm. So they came up and they were looking at her, and I could hear their telepathic banter. No, not her. No, she's no good. She's not the one. Mm-mm. And then they walked away, and then we were unparalyzed. We ran back to the car and didn't talk about it, didn't talk at all to each other the next day. We weren't living together or anything. And then the day after that, she broke it off. And I didn't tell her what had happened to us had anything to do with me, but it was pretty clear it had everything to do with me.
Wow. Yeah, they can definitely butt in on your life like that, huh? So it's
It makes you wonder about ghosts, if spirit can interfere and
and it actually can. That's why I said I think that the two do go hand in hand. Alien, UFO, and paranormal. It's there's a lot of similarities. Very different types of experiences, but a lot of similarities for sure.
Mm-hmm.
So with you being involved with MUFON, how, like, if somebody says I have something I want to report, how do they make that report? How do you guys investigate that report? What do you look at?
Okay, so switching gears to the UFO side of things a little bit. So MUFON's been around since 1969. I have not been around since 1969, but MUFON has. And, there's state chapters, there's provincial chapters, there's national chapters around the world. MUFON's in over 40 countries, has over 5,000 paying members currently. And what we do, of course, is we investigate UFO sightings. Since 2010, when we got our most recent version of our database up and going, we've received over 100,000 worldwide cases to MUFON just since 2010. These aren't things we go out and cherry pick and say, oh, there's something on the internet. I add it to the pile. Every single one of these came from a witness. And the great majority, almost all, I would love to say all, but nearly all of the cases that come in are investigated. And most of what comes into us, we can identify, like about 95% of what people report. We can say, oh, that was this aircraft, or it was this celestial object, or it was a drone, a Chinese lantern, Starlink satellites, et cetera, et cetera. But that remaining 5% remains very interesting. In Michigan, we have about 200 sightings a year come in. It's been just over 200 for a little bit now. Like this year, we're at, I think, 214 with still about a month to go. And so that means there'll be, with 95%, there'll be at least 10 really good cases that come in. And MUFON has historically been an organization that looks at flying saucer reports. The reporting form is mostly a checkbox. It moved this fast. It was this color. I saw it at this time, at this azimuth, and all these little basic things like that. And that was how the organization is built. And that's really still its real bread and butter. But in 1989, when I saw my UFO sighting that I decided to report, I'd had abduction stuff happen to me. And I just really didn't even think there was anybody to maybe tell about that unless I was going to write a letter to like a Bud Hopkins or a Whitley Strieber. I didn't know about MUFON in 1989 when me and two friends had a sighting where we were in my buddy's Chevette outside this girl's house. Was a friend of ours. We were waiting to get home from school, work, pardon me. It was in February of 89. And when the three of us were parked in this car, this bright blue ball light at about the height of two telephone poles slowly flew over the car that we were in, and we watched it. And then this white ball of light zigzagged all over the entirety of the sky right after, and then that disappeared. And then a red light appeared in the middle of the sky to about the size of the full moon, which is very, very large. And then that shrank, and then that disappeared. And my one friend says, oh my gosh, we should tell the police. We're like, we're a bunch of high school seniors. Yeah, we're going to call the police and tell them we saw UFOs.
Like, are you huffing?
Like, sir, what drugs are you taking?
And then so my other friend says, yeah, that's a crazy idea. But the Air National Guard base, Selfridge, is not too far from us. We should tell them. I'm like, wait a second, you're not going to tell the police, but you're going to tell the military? So we didn't know who to tell. And it wasn't until I was in college a few years later, I found out about MUFON, told them my UFO report. And afterwards, I'm like, wow, I trust these people. I like these people. Tell you what, I've got this other stuff that's happened to me too. And it turned out that the Michigan state director at the time was the head of the person that nationwide, or internationally, I should say, for MUFON, was in charge of looking at abductions. And so luckily for me, and she was a state licensed certified hypnotherapist, she regressed me several times and helped figure out some of the fine details of the stuff I'd already remembered. And that was 93, and I stayed on ever since. And in 2004, I became state director. So now I've been state director for about 20 years, which is a long time in MUFON years. Mm-hmm. So MUFON does look at UFOs primarily. MUFON does look at abduction type phenomena. Almost entirely separately, because there are different types of phenomena. When you hear somebody tell a UFO account, it's, I saw a red light do a zigzag, I saw it for 3 seconds, whatever. And that's my report. If somebody says, oh yeah, I've had an abduction experience, and basically what'll happen is if I speak to somebody who is an experiencer, which is a common lingo for somebody who's had this abduction type of phenomena happen to them. Close contact with a being that could be extraterrestrial. I don't know. That's a leading theory, but that even has yet to be determined. So this is how this basically goes. I tell them that I have about 45 minutes, and I ask some basic details. They talk for 90 minutes. Then I say, okay, maybe we can continue this another time. And I get on the phone with them again, and I say, I've got about 45 minutes. And then they talk to me for about 90 minutes again. And then on that third call, we can keep it to about 45 minutes, and I can actually start to ask questions, because they'll get going, and they can't stop. And one account will tie into another account. Like they'll say, I woke up in my bed and there was a being, and it had a sort of a silver baton in its hand, like this other time where I saw this silver baton. And then that time, my neighbor was there. And this other time where my neighbor was there, this happened. And it all ties into each other. It's not just a single event. These events, these abduction events, wrap into each other like this big tapestry, this big, long mosaic of a story that is not just a one-off account. And when you hear these one-off accounts from people about them being taken and something happening to them, it's interesting. But then you really get to see where all the dots connect, and it's really mind-blowing. And one of the big questions that I always still ask, I ask it of myself, and as well as some of the other experiences I hear about, is why do they care so much about individuals that they spend this much time and invest so much in particular individuals and have this long running relationship? It's not an encounter, it's a relationship. These beings have relationships with people. I'm not saying necessarily romantically, just they're involved.